the music video. So that's why there was some noise at the end. Okay, I got a legitimate problem that I don't know the answer to. Because I do think that one of the best ways to get hope, meaning, and purpose in life is to have kids. It's very challenging, very difficult, but anything worth striving for is that way. But here's my problem. In our country, in the United States, and in most countries, the people who can't afford kids are having kids, and the people who can afford kids are not. So how do you fix that problem? Some people don't even view that as a problem. Well, so what? Well, it is a problem in my opinion because when people, let's say middle class or lower, have kids that they can't afford, financial stress is one of the biggest reasons people get divorced. Financial stress means you become dependent on others to survive. And let's say a lot of Christians, even Muslims, more so Christians, they would say, get the government out of my kid's life. Like, don't indoctrinate my kids, whatever. Take them to public school. But that's the state, federal government in your life. And the more the government pays for your kids, the more they have a right to have a say in how your kids are raised. Because you're not paying for them. Like, usually what you pay for is what you own. So, what do you do with that conundrum? Some people would say that, well, who cares if people don't have kids? We should even encourage people middle class and lower not to have kids. Wealthy people don't have kids, and we'll just walk into extinction together. Boy, that's a painful way to go. Very painful. It'd be better if a huge rock the size of our moon hits our planet and we just go instantly. That would be fine. But slowly going into extinction, that would be rough. So assuming you don't want to go with the rough route, how do you fix this problem? I'm going to open up the room and see if anybody wants to call in. I sincerely don't know the answer to this question. And maybe people have ideas. Like, you can incentivize the wealthy or middle class and higher to have more kids through tax breaks and so forth. But that's already being done, kind of. You can encourage people, I guess, to be more religious. But even then, I think what I said still holds true for religious people. Religious people in the United States, if the wealthier they are, they tend to have less kids. How many kids did my parents have? 4. And my parents' parents had 9. Actually, let me bring up the chat. So there's because the chat for you, those of you who don't know, the chat goes away when I cut things out, like the music that is copyrighted. So if I do this, then it will stay. And let me go live chat. So call in. I'll pin this link. And give me your opinion on what's the solution. But in the meantime, I'm going to play a guy named Scott Galloway, who's, I think, a professor somewhere. Professor of finance, maybe? And that's my background as well. And there's a lot of things we agree on, a lot of things we don't. It's quite simple. Anything but a quiverful lifestyle is sinful and leads to destruction. The only way to have our tribe to succeed at world domination is to outbreed our enemy. Well, Floyd, you're kind of saying we should all become traditional Catholics. That's what I'm hearing. Or Mennonites, Protestant Mennonites, or Amish. Maybe the solution is go back to agricultural type industries. More family farms. But that's inefficient. See, that's a problem. Our food costs will go up. Anyhow, let me pin this link. And let's listen to some of the things this guy named Scott Galloway has to say. He was on MSNBC. See, I'm a right-winger, but I listen to MSNBC. Probably more so than Fox News. Because I like to listen to people I disagree with. But in this segment, I think I agree with most of it.
Yeah.
So, Scott, let's get into your book. But first, run through, if you will. I've seen you talk about this in speeches. Talk about how the system is rigged. So if you got $1 million, great. If you got 5 million, 10 million, even better. Life gets easier because the way our tax system's set up.
Yeah, we have a very progressive tax system until you get to about the 99th percent. And essentially the people who get most damaged by our current tax code, it's lower and middle income households, their taxes have gone up slightly because of consumption, but not because of federal. The people that really get hurt are what I call the workhorses. And that are people who make an exceptionally good living, but it's all current income, and they live in a blue state. They might be paying 50 to 54% tax rate. I bet some of those people are on around this table right now.
Yeah. So he's talking about people who make, let's say, between $100,000 and $500,000 a year. If you live in a blue state, you're probably giving more money in state and federal taxes than you're keeping for yourself.
But if you can make the jump to light speed and invest in assets, stocks, housing, then your tax rate plummets. So in America, we've decided.
Is that true? I guess that depends on what you mean by plummet. But the current long-term capital gains rate is 15%, and I think the average income or tax rate for people in the top bracket is 27%.
Decided to try and create a super class of billionaires, and then if they win the gold medal, we're going to give them the silver and the bronze. Two biggest tax deductions: capital gains and mortgage interest. Who owns home?
Can someone explain to me? I listened to this before. How is capital gains a tax deduction? Through capital gains losses, but then that's capped at $3,000 per year. What does he mean here? Does he mean deduction in the sense that it's lower than your normal income rate? But if you filled out taxes, capital gains is not a deduction. It's a tax. Deductions lower your taxes. So unless he's talking about capital gains losses, but I don't think he's saying that.
Homes and stocks, people my age. Who doesn't know? Who rents and makes their money from current income? Young people. So we've decided that the wealthiest people in the world should get exceptionally more wealthy. Minimum wage stuck at $9.25. Stock market is screamed up. The average 70-year-old is 72% wealthier than they were 40 years ago. The average person under the age of 40 is 24% less wealthy. We are purposely transferring more wealth from the poor and middle class and the upper class to the super rich, and from young to old.
Yeah, purposely transferring wealth from the poor to the old. What does he mean by that? As far as I know, there is no legislation that taxes young people and takes that money and gives it to rich people. So he's definitely not meaning that. I think what he means is the wealth disparity caused by the Federal Reserve, maybe? Inflating asset prices, printing money left and right, causing inflation, which is a tax on the poor. If he doesn't mean that, then I think what he said is kind of stupid. But I give him the benefit of the doubt and think that's what he means. But one could also make the argument that it is better for really productive members of society to be taxed less. And I know for people on the left, it's very hard to imagine that there are better people than other people when it comes to financial productivity. It feels too icky to say that some people are better than others in the financial world. But if you do believe that, then it's like compounding interest. If you put money into a bond, a savings account, and it gets interest and it's compounded that interest, if you take some money out, then it's kind of like you got to start all over again. And very wealthy people who are genuinely, sincerely productive members of society who can innovate and make wise decisions, business decisions, to create jobs, you probably want them to keep more of their money because they are getting a higher return on their investment than most other people. So you actually want to tax them less, and in the long run, society's better. But this is something that is very difficult for most people to swallow, because it just feels unfair.
And you say in the book, which is true and alarming, but let's say a 30-year-old American in America right now is doing no better than his or her parents. Then that's a new thing in American history that you would think over time, we want to do better than the next generation, than the last generation.
No, it doesn't look like a new thing. It looks like it's a trend from going all the way back to the 40s. What happened in the 40s? Why was it so high in the 40s? Percent of children earning more than their parents. Yeah, see, in the 40s, you're comparing parents who lived in the 30s. In the 30s was a depression. 40s was a war and a lot of borrowing, and then the war ended, and then there was a baby boom. But yeah, this trend is going down.
Generation, it's not happening anymore.
I think it all ties into what we're talking about on campuses. For the first time in our nation's history, a 30-year-old man or woman isn't doing as well as his or her parents were at 30. That is the social compact breaking down. People aged 30 to 34, 60% of them in 1990 had one child. Now it's 27%. People are opting out of America. They're not optimistic about it. They're not having kids. Young people aren't having sex. They're not meeting. They're not mating.
Yeah, I think he's right. Young people are not having sex. Well, why is that? My theory is because it's difficult. It's especially difficult for men, since women tend to be the gatekeepers for coitus. Why risk rejection when you can go home and turn on your internet? Most men, the orgasm takes place within 60 seconds or less. Why spend all the time whining and dining and spending money, risking rejection, being careful what you have to say? I mean, the return on investment for sex is incredibly low when you do it the old-fashioned way. This is another problem that I wish somebody would call in and help me figure out how to fix. Because I think what I said is true. Like, if a man just needs sex and his choices are go on his computer, done in like 5 minutes or less, or spend all the time trying to get a woman to like him, I mean, it's no contest. By the way, I'm assuming he's talking about just sex before marriage, the typical, fornication that those evil young people do. I'm not talking about in the context of marriage. Because in marriage, you don't have to deal with rejection. Well, I guess maybe a little bit.
Pool of emotionally and economically viable men shrinks every day, which lessens household formation. So we have a real issue. Young people are enraged. So it turns every cut, every movement into an opportunistic infection because, quite frankly, they are just pissed off. They look up, they see wealth, exceptional wealth across my generation and people in certain industries.
They look up. See, back 30 years ago, it was harder for young people to look up and see wealth. There wasn't the internet. Well, not 30 years ago. Let's say 50 years ago for sure. No, 30 years ago, the internet just came out in the early 90s. But now people can turn on TikTok. They can turn on, go anywhere on the internet. They travel more than they used to. And they can see real wealth. And then guess what? They get jealous. Why can't I have that? It was harder to do that, I think, in the 80s. Most people just lived in their own small town, didn't have internet, weren't even aware of the wealth disparity that did exist, could exist. Well, I'm sure that, they watched movies and saw rich people, but, that's unattainable.
And they are really struggling. Their purchasing power is going down, and the incumbents create artificial scarcity on campus. We take pride in rejecting 90% of our applicants. So the incumbents who already have a degree see their degree go up in value. We get very concerned with housing and traffic once we own the housing.
I don't agree that. I'm not sure if the supply and demand curve works with university degrees. Just because there's less people coming in makes the degree more valuable. Not all the time. Depends on what the type of degree.
Housing permits are sequestered from young people. Housing prices have gone from $290 to $420 in the last 4 years. So a young person, a house, stocks that I don't own skyrocket in value. Let's have COVID relief and flush the markets and take assets way up because of a...
See, and the thing is nowadays, let's say you're a young person with, I don't know, $500 in your savings account. You can buy index ETFs very cheaply nowadays. So it's not a matter that young people can't invest in the stock market. It's just they're too stupid to do it. They haven't been told, hey, you're young, maybe start investing, start saving. But I really want those shoes. I really want that iPhone.
Million people dying would be bad, would be tragic if I got less wealthy. And we're doing it on their credit card. Young people have every reason to be enraged, and every issue they see, they look up, they get angry, and they see someone doing better than them, and then every day it is speedballed in their face.
Yeah. But you know, sometimes they deserve it. And sometimes they deserve to say, hey, you're not as good as someone else. Smarten up. Start making better choices with your life. But I do agree that it is much tougher today for young people to buy things because of inflation, like homes. And I would blame the Federal Reserve for this. So I think they have the right to, or the opportunity to blame the Federal Reserve.
That they are failing, that they are not doing as well as everyone around them. We have lost the script. Our kids are more anxious and more depressed and more obese and more addicted, and we have made a purposeful decision to let this happen.
Yeah, and I blame the fathers for that too. Don't blame the greater society around you for the anxieties and the depression and the obesity. Like, where's the parents? This gets back to what I was saying earlier. There's some parents who are horrible parents, and they shouldn't reproduce. See, for the Christian people listening right now, there are some people, the world would be better if they were aborted. And if you don't believe me, I mean, you got to start watching some videos, YouTube videos, TikTok videos of some heinous things young people do. And then ask yourself, if they were aborted, the world would be a better place. And you know what? I bet you anything, Christians deep down, they won't say this out loud. I'm talking to you Catholics right now, especially because you're against abortion. But deep down, you know what I'm saying is the truth. That there's horrible parents out there, and there's horrible kids out there because of it.
By ensuring the people around this table stay wealthy at the cost of young people.
So, Scott, what the social element of that, that's the economic element, the social elements that you mentioned, the happiness, the anxiety, all of those things, that kids aren't getting together anymore, that they're not
that's
having
a problem.
kids. What happened in one generation? Social media has to play a role in it, I'm sure. But what else do you see that has created this climate for this generation?
I think you have the most talented, well-resourced people in the world and companies trying to convince a young man that he can have a reasonable facsimile of life in his basement behind a screen. You don't need friends. Go on Reddit or Discord. You don't need to get a job. Go on Robinhood or Coinbase and trade crypto and stocks. You don't need to go through the rejection and the expense and the humiliation and working out and having a plan and humor and showering to get a romantic relationship.
Showering.
You have YouPorn. So we have an entire generation, especially of young men, who are out home sequestering from society and missing out on what it means. You know, there's a reason romantic comedies are 2 hours and not 15 minutes. True victory in life is hard. Going out, meeting someone, finding mentors, finding mates.
Yeah, okay, I agree with him here. And this gets back to what I was saying earlier about reaching orgasm. Young men today, and young women need to understand that there's meaning, purpose, joy in building relationship and not just getting off. But then again, I understand the young men's perspective of with the Me Too movement, there's so many rotten to the core women out there who, if you do the wrong thing, say the wrong thing, I mean, you're walking on eggshells. I guess that's why there's passport bros, right?
That stuff is hard, but that's what real victory in real life is like. And because a lot of men feel rejected on dating apps, the number of jobs that are accessible to them has gone down. You have essentially a group of men who are saying, I want a low-risk entry into life, and they go down a rabbit hole. When they don't have social connections, and they don't get out, and they don't have the prospect of a romantic relationship, they're more prone to conspiracy theory, they're more prone to misogynistic content, they're less likely to believe in climate change, and some they become really bad citizens. We are producing too many of the most dangerous person in the world.
Who's producing the dangerous people in the world? Society or the parents? Because there's a lot of, like, we're focusing on the negative, but on the positive side, there's a lot of great kids in the world today. A lot of great kids in the United States. But usually it's because they have great parents. Not because of what society has done. Am I wrong? I don't think so.
And that is a young, broke, and lonely young man.
Why is it that so many of these young people that you're talking about seem to head into life after going to 4-year schools or 2-year schools or whatever, head into life with a lack of financial literacy? They don't know anything about money or the growth of money. All they know is the absence of money.
I think we need to have in our curriculums in high school a class on adulting.
Yeah.
My kid, I see it in my house. My kid can do integers and basic calculus, but he doesn't.
When I homeschooled my daughter, I think it was grade 9, I came up with a new course called, it was sort of like adulting, but real life stuff. So I would take my daughter in the car, and we'd go to the bank, go to the grocery store, and I'd teach her how to interact with humans. I still do it today, even though they're both adults now, 18 and 20. But I teach them how to interact with other humans, how to make people laugh behind the till at the bank, what exactly I'm doing at the bank, what the sign that says interest rates, APR actually means. Go to the checkout at the Fry's grocery store and say hi and make the person, the teller, not the teller, what do you call it, the grocery clerk laugh and say, hey, my name is so-and-so. I mean, if you live in a community, let people know your face, your name. And that way when they see you, oh, that person's not a thief. I know that person.
Doesn't understand the interest on his credit card. So there's just some basic kind of financial literacy that we're not teaching. And when you start replacing civics with computer science, you lose a sense of the country and you start learning about programming. And when you don't talk about basic financial literacy or even mating, I would like to see in the senior year of college mating dynamics and help men understand and women what is unique to them and their vulnerabilities to social media.
Yes, good idea. In fact, I would start a course called Rejection 101 for men. No women allowed in this class. I would be sexist. And I would say, okay, today men, this would be a college course, I guess, for 18 to 22-year-olds. Today, men, what you're going to do is you're going to very politely and civilly ask various girls on campus to have lunch in a public place. A date. And your goal is to get 99 rejections by being nice. And then hope for one yes. There was a dating coach I used to know on a different platform. He's actually pretty famous. And this was his advice too. Learn to be rejected over and over and over again, and to the point where it doesn't bother you. You become numb and say, okay, you don't want to date me? Fine. Have a good date. Water off a duck's back. But you're still polite, civil. Rejection 101. Yeah, I like that.
I was talking about the challenges of men from social media. At exactly the wrong time in a young girl's life, she is presented with a valuation where she never gets to leave the high school cafeteria 24/7. And as my colleague Jonathan Hyde has pointed out, we've seen a dramatic uptick in suicide. But I think effectively we just don't have basic skills for young people. We're teaching them advanced things, but we're not teaching them the basics around what a mortgage is, what interest rates mean.
Yeah, he's making it sound like this is a failure of society. And this is the difference between left and right. I would say this is a failure of parenting. Like my daughter learned right away what a CD was and how interest rates work and how compounding works when she actually took her own money and bought a CD. Then looks at her account. Oh, I got X amount of dollars this month. And now I'm getting more. Why? Oh, I'm getting interest on interest. Ooh, compounding.
So I think we could use just a basic class on adulting, junior or senior year.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has...
Okay, so yeah, I would agree with most of the things he said there. This was another one I found. By the way, you can call in at any time. Room's open. And give me your advice on how to fix the problems of young people, fix the problems of reproduction.
I start with my guest, and that is to get their big picture assessment of the economy, where we are today. Let's start there before we dive into the book.
The honest answer about so if anything can convince you that nobody knows, it's this economy, because I think at your old employer, you were at Bloomberg, right?
I was a Business Insider and Yahoo Finance.
Okay, got it. Bloomberg does an audit of economists around projections.
Yeah, see, this is discouraging. You have the bias we all have where you think everyone is like you. People are naturally very dumb, Doug. I would say half the people have an IQ below 100. That means there's a lot of people with good enough IQs to know basic financial principles. Maybe I'm just an optimist. But I don't think most people are naturally very dumb. Maybe a lot of people are ignorant, but you don't need to take a finance class to know some basic principles. Like, I remember my dad teaching me, whenever you buy something, Doug, ask yourself, do you really need it? Can you do without it? If the answer is no, I don't really need it. Yes, I can do without it. Then maybe consider saving that money instead. At a very young age, my dad taught me, he didn't do it in percentages, but he basically made me realize there is such thing as having too much debt. It becomes very risky. So these are basic things.
The coming year, the first time they've had any issue where the economists were all unanimous in their viewpoint was that in 2022, they all agreed that we were going into some form of recession.
Man in Charge asked a good question. Are you encouraging your children to seek mates? The answer is yes. In fact, I taught my son how to pick up a girl about a year ago at the airport, and he was successful. Got her number and everything. Well, I had to walk him through it. How to pick up a girl 101. And I'm encouraging my daughter. I actually encourage my daughter to go to church youth group events and go to parties and so forth. But here's another thing. You teach your kids, if you're at a party, never, ever, 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 ever drink alcohol, especially if you're under, 25. And there's some people you know but don't really know. Just don't drink. That alone will save you a ton of problems.
Hello.
Hi, Sean.
It's me again. Crazy environmentalist, sorry.
Yeah, your audio is too sucky. Let's get back to this.
23. That did not happen. Nobody saw a record acceleration in interest rates and mortgages to go from 2.5% to 7.5%, and that housing prices would explode. That just usually doesn't happen. So the reality is, and this is part of the book, nobody knows. That's my general assessment of the economy. So you want to be invested, you want to be diversified, and you don't want to fall into the trap of believing that you can predict the economy in cycles.
Yeah, this is why index investing is preferred. Digital Gnosis asks, but it's so hard to find a woman who isn't a lunatic. an idiot and has good values. No, it's actually, there's a lot of really nice women out there. You're just looking in the wrong places. You need to go to a Mennonite church or a Catholic church and find a traditional conservative woman, Digital Gnosis.
Because it's just.
But if you let her know that you're an atheist, then she'll probably not want to talk to you.
One of the wonderful things about the markets is, in fact, nobody knows and it can behave irrationally. The bigger picture, America is a remarkable economy right now. Strongest GDP growth in the G7, lowest inflation, record job growth. I mean, it's not distributed. What William Gibson said about the future, it could be said about our prosperity right now, and that it's not distributed equally, but prosperity is here. There are few nations that wouldn't kill to have our economy right now.
Yeah, he's right. Our economy is doing fine. What is it? That was 3.6% real GDP growth year over year, I think, from last quarter, something like that. Maybe a little lower, 3.1. It's fine, but here's the crux of it. Our economy is doing well. It's fine, and yet we're getting record deficits every year. Under the Biden administration, the deficit's never been higher. And we're getting to the point where our interest on the deficit, interest on the debt, is going to be one of the top line items. Okay, who's trying to get in here now? Sean, your audio sucks. Yeah, listen to that. Nobody's going to listen to you with that humming in the background. Okay.
For all the talk about China becoming the biggest economy in the world, in the last 3 years, they've shed $6 trillion in market cap from their stock market. We've had just 7 companies add 3 or 4 trillion in the last 4 months. So it's, if you don't like our economy, it's the least bad in the world right now.
Yeah. Okay. So the last time I had you on would have been late 2022. You had your book Adrift, America in 100 Different Charts, and we did talk about the economic picture there. Has your assessment? It sounds a bit more upbeat than it was back then. Has it changed at all, like the broader picture of the economy?
On a meta basis, the American economy is doing really well. I would argue.
Elias, I love how PineCreek rightfully cries about the erosion of traditional values in the West, but then boasts about teaching children how to act promiscuously. No, and pick up girls. I'm not talking about having sex and one night stand. I'm talking about just learning how to interact with the opposite sex and go out to lunch in a public place where it's safe for the woman. I mean, if my own son gets tongue-tied with just talking to a girl, I mean, what hope does he have? I'm not, unless you're talking about every marriage should be arranged and you shouldn't talk to women until they get married and it's arranged by your parents. And anything else is promiscuous other than that.
The ground zero for what is the problems that ail our economy, or it's not our economy, our society, is that the prosperity is not evenly distributed. That for the first time in our nation's history, a 30-year-old is not doing as well as his or her parents were at 30. That's never happened before.
So many like personal finance books. I know this is not like the Susie Orman, Dave Ramsey type of book.
Yeah.
What was it that made you want to write this particular book, the focus on, I guess like building wealth? Is it for that younger version of you, or is it for the younger, like what we're saying, this younger generation right now kind of feels a little bit left out?
Well, it's for anyone who has, at least 20 years to kind of build wealth. So that means if you're over the age of 70, this book isn't for you. Because the reality is a lot of people call me and say, I'm in my...
Hey, Turd Ferguson.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. A lot better than Sean.
All right. I have crazy ideas versus slightly less crazy ideas for how to fix this problem. Turn everyone into an ultra-Orthodox Jew. They have 8 children per woman in Israel. Or practice Sharia law on everybody. Those are the crazy ones. Slightly less crazy would be a little bit of what Galloway was saying, which was make young people earn more money, maybe support unions. A lot of people who are in unions and in union drives right now across the country are in low-paying jobs, and they're some of the people you might call dumb who have a lot.
What if the young people don't deserve more money? Like, there's always a common conception. Oh, young people need more money. Well, they have to earn it. Yes.
There's always the crazy idea of just make them all ultra-Orthodox Jews. I mean, nobody deserves anything. Ultimately, we're all born in sin and so on. So tell me what you mean by deserve.
Well, they got to earn it. So if you just don't give people money for nothing, right? Or are you okay
Yeah,
with
okay.
that?
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to put this in the way Jonathan Haidt talks about it, because I know you're conservative and you have multiple different kinds of morality that you tap into, as opposed to liberals that don't have a lot of moral. They only think about harm and fairness, as in everyone, fairness of outcome. So do you think that somebody who is an employee at a cafe who is trying to get a union to work in that cafe and improve their benefits and something like that at a coffee shop where they make $20 an hour, do you think that is too much?
Yes.
Do you think that it's fair for them if they if you compare that to how much they're making for the company? For example, if they're selling 20 times that much in coffee at that day?
Yeah, if the company is making doing very, very well, then the owner can afford to pay them more. But the thing is, like, a 16-year-old can do a lot of those jobs. A responsible 16-year-old can do those jobs. Usually in the restaurant industry, labor makes up a third of the expenses, and the food and paper make up a third, and then the third is to pay for everything else.
And you know this because you were in finance, and I think this is your kind of business.
This is what I do every day.
Yeah. So I'll trust you on that.
And right now, with the minimum wage in California and certain tips, the return on investment for the employee can actually be higher than the owner. The owners, depending on how big the restaurant is and how much revenue it generates, their return on investment can be as low as, well, let's put it this way, their EBITDA margins, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization, EBITDA, can be about 5 at the lowest. If it's 0, they're going to be going out of business. But 5% to 15%. If they're really high volume sales, it can be as high as 20, 25. But now think about someone, a restaurant worker who makes a 20, 25% tip on their investment, on their labor. They're making the same as the owner without taking any risk.
As a percentage, but maybe not as full dollar to dollar.
But here's the problem with giving young people more money. Inflation. You think that's going to help the cost of a house?
There's been, speaking about inflation, there's, like, if we could fix inflation, I think that would help a lot of people.
But how do you fix inflation?
Well, you raise interest rates as the government, but you might push back on this. There's been a lot of talk about corporate profits skyrocketing over the last 5 years, I guess.
Especially in tech, yeah.
In tech, but also places like Kroger, Albertsons, different grocery stores that are making a lot more.
So you think a big chunk of inflation is price gouging by companies?
Yeah, I do think that. But, I'm willing to change my mind on that. But I think that's a reasonable portion of.
Do you think competition amongst grocery stores and restaurants and so forth doesn't really exist? Like that doesn't work anymore? That a grocery store low prices to get more customers?
Well, they're all merging together. There's Kroger's and Albertsons are merging together.
Oh, you're in the Southwest, I can tell.
I've moved around the country enough to keep track of different places.
If you want to really get rid of inflation, it's not through raising interest rates. You know why?
I don't know why. It's not my specialty.
Because people who have no debt, raising interest rates is not going to affect them. In fact, if people with cash balances, companies with cash balances, they're actually making more earnings per share, because they're getting tremendous amounts of interest on their cash. Like, and you feel even more wealthy. So you spend more, and it actually can overheat. If you want to really lower inflation, you need a depression. I mean, in fact, if you want asset prices to go down, you need a depression. And most people don't want a depression, so you're kind of
like a depression, like a recession, maybe, or
well, yeah,
like
a severe
depression.
recession, a depression. In fact, if you really want inflation to come down, you would get rid of minimum wage laws and say, hey, if someone's willing to work for $2 an hour, let them. Then you'll start seeing prices dive.
Yeah. So I think I've told you before that I am a medical doctor.
Oh, really? In what field?
In internal medicine. I'll just stick to that. I won't go into deeper detail.
I want to know in case I get a problem and I can come to you. You'll give me a deal, right?
You want to go to Dr. Turd Ferguson? But the reason I say that is I get to deal with a lot of different kinds of people, and a lot of them can't read medical labels. A lot of them, if you tell them this drug is something you need to take every day or you increase your risk of death, they won't take it every day. They'll take it maybe 25 days a month. So I think that...
So you view people based on experience as being more stupid than smart.
Yeah, and that goes for wealthy and poor people. But
really? Wealthy people can't read labels either?
Wealthy people don't take their meds properly all the time. Not all of them do.
Well, maybe it's because they don't trust you. They don't trust doctors anymore.
I mean, poor people don't trust doctors either. So, and it's not like I'm talking about the COVID vaccine. I'm talking about,
I know,
things like, blood thinners where you should take that every day properly.
I took a medication the other day and almost killed me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I took benzonatate. You know what that is?
I think it's for, what's it called? It's for vomiting.
It's for getting rid of deep lung mucus.
Oh yeah, okay.
And then the pill accidentally broke while it was in my mouth, and it constricted my windpipe to such a degree I could barely breathe. And then I quickly took some antihistamine and then went away. But that was scary. I wish the pharmacist would have told me, make sure that pill gets swallowed with lots of water and you do not put any pressure on the pill, because if it has a tiny leak, you could die.
Yeah, we always tell patients you need to drink a lot of water with every pill, no matter how good you think you are. But I think... I don't think very highly of people, PineCreek. I think half of all people have an IQ below 100. And I think those people with an IQ below 100, if you made the minimum wage $2, they would take $2 an hour and go home and get poorer and poorer every day. And then you end up with a terrible situation. So I think minimum wage laws are to protect stupid people from accepting bad deals.
Wow. It's basically a form of welfare then.
No, it's not a form of welfare. It's a form of making.
It's privatizing welfare. If someone doesn't deserve $20 an hour, but by law you give them 20 hours. By law you give them 20 hours.
They do deserve $12 an hour.
But you just said they're stupid, most of them. How can a stupid person deserve $20 an hour?
Let me say it very financially. They make their bosses $15 an hour.
If that were true, I'm not denying that.
And they're willing to accept a wage of $2 an hour, not knowing that that's actually what they make for their boss. and not willing to fight for a higher wage.
I'm sure that's true in some cases, but in a lot of cases, what we're seeing is employers just firing or letting go some employees and then asking the employees that remain, the most productive employees, to work even harder.
Yeah, in that case, I think this is just going to be a difference of values between some of us, but also a difference of, what we appreciate, like different kinds of facts. I lean more towards the bleeding heart liberal. My idea of fairness is whatever people make for their bosses, they should be paid maybe at least 70% of that.
Whoa! You have not worked in business.
Oh, I have not. No, I have not. I haven't touched that stuff. But
okay, hang on. Can I change your mind on that?
I'm willing to lower it to maybe 30% or so.
But, I didn't even have to say anything, and you went from 70 to 30.
but there are instances where, I'll say this, how do I say? There are places online who people who work in YouTube who sell merchandise through a company, and their rate of return is 2% of the profits that are made off of that merchandise, even though it's in their likeness, even though it's in based on their own work. So I believe that there are unfair contracts out there that don't pay people enough, depending, whereby enough, I mean at least 30% or so of what you make for your boss.
Okay. I've personally know people who have had stores, restaurants being shut down because they didn't pay off. I mean, people didn't come. They took a risk and it didn't pan out. A typical restaurant, let's say, cost $2 million. You have to put some banks 20%, other banks 30% down over either 7 to 10 years. So now you're putting down $5,600,000 with a personal guarantee. Okay. And then you have to do work to find, if you're not going to do the work yourself as a manager, operator, owner, then you have to find the right managers who will then find the right employees and so forth. And then you're responsible, if it's a franchise, for example, you're responsible for the service fees, the royalties, the advertising, national advertising. Those are fixed. You got to pay them. And then you got to find a location with reasonable rent. And if you don't own your own land. So what I'm getting at is there are fixed costs. There is tremendous amount of risk. And what do you think would be a fair return on that $600,000 investment? And all the sweat equity.
Yeah, I think that's a very tough decision. But
I can tell you it's at least 20%. Like nobody's going to take that
good
type
return?
of nobody's going to take that type of risk and have all that sweat equity if they can't at least make 20% return. Because there's going to be, even if they have multiple locations, it's very conceivable 1 out of 5, 2 out of 5 are going to fail.
Yeah.
So employees have no clue about this stuff, and they think they deserve this certain wage, when really a robot or a responsible 13-year-old could do their job.
Well, that's the part. If a responsible 13-year-old can do their job, then how come responsible 13-year-olds aren't doing that job?
Because I think it's illegal. Which maybe it shouldn't be.
16-year-olds do work, but they're not the majority of all people working minimum wage jobs. The majority of minimum wage jobs are being worked full-time by people who are well into their 20s and possibly in their 30s.
Yeah.
And that's
a problem.
Reflects something bad, like not just on the part of those people, but in society as a whole.
I think minimum wage jobs are meant for people who just graduated from high school or are currently in high school, let's say 17, 18 years old, and to learn responsibility, learn how to show up on work on time, learn some people skills, management skills, whatever. And it's not meant, if you are a parent of 2 or 3 kids and you're working at a fast food restaurant, you have failed in life. You have made bad choices in life, and you're basically in a desperation situation. Those jobs are not meant to feed a family. Those jobs are meant to teach kids how to be responsible members and productive members of society. But let's get back to what's the solution to all the stupid people, Turd, Ferguson?
I think that people with low IQ, to be politically correct, are the people who have the most kids. And they're going to be...
Sterilize them? Is that what you're saying?
No, don't steal. Jeez, no. I'm saying that they're going to be the people who take care of their kids the most. You know, just look at the foster care system or adoption or even the stereotype of the stepmother. So leave people to get their own kids and then give them enough resources to take care of their kids. Here's another thing. Instead of pushing everyone to go to...
That's very inefficient, though.
Degrees. Okay.
Let's stick on that first one. You're basically saying, let the stupid reproduce like bunnies.
And give them jobs that work. So
how can they...
The other half of that is maybe not everyone needs to go to college to get an engineering
How can they
degree.
get jobs to work when they're reproducing like bunnies? Are you saying they all go into childcare then?
No. I mean, they can have 4 kids per family or something like that. But then
so you're talking one
electricity.
But now we're down to either the mom or dad has to stay home to take care of the 4 kids, and then one of them has to go out and work.
Yeah.
So
one of the problems with that is, especially in the African American community, is a lot of men have kids and then they're sent to jail for stupid nonviolent crimes like smoking a joint. I think that having fewer people go to prison and letting them be in their community, around their family, is better than putting them in prison and ruining their prospects of getting a good job in the future.
What about a father who steals cars?
That's a bad father.
Yeah, but should he go to prison?
He should. But if a father just smokes marijuana and does nothing else, should he go to prison, Mike?
No. I agree with you. But I think that's probably maybe in the past, but I think today, someone can look up the stats on that. But I don't think that is even close to the majority of the situation.
Until very recently, well, maybe this is where I disagree with you. I think until very recently, the rate at which Black people get arrested for smoking marijuana compared to white people is about 3 to 5 times higher. I don't have the exact source on hand right now. But at the same time, polling suggests that white people and Black people use marijuana at the same rate.
Systemic racism, right?
Well, I mean, you can call it that, whatever you want to call it. I think it's bad. You know, if 2 people are doing the same crime and getting punished differently for it, that's bad.
Let me propose another. I'm sure that happens because of racism, but there could be other factors that might cause that. For example, there could be a certain judge in a certain community that is really tough on crime and is trying to make a statement to, let's say, an African American community, hey, don't do this. And so gives harsher, longer sentences, let's say. Another one is, let's say a white person's driving their new Mercedes and the African American's driving their old Malibu, and the taillight's out on the Malibu, but not on the Mercedes. Oh, and then they get pulled over for the taillight. Oh, and they happen to have a joint in their hand or in the car. So that has nothing to do.
That's very true. Actually, this is what do I call it? Systemic racism, if you want to call it that. These distinctions, these differences that we don't like, they can happen without a single person having an ounce of racism in them. Just, for example, by having cops patrol in poor neighborhoods more than in rich neighborhoods, because they're looking for other crimes, and then they manage to catch a few kids smoking a joint, and then that kid's life gets ruined because laws are very tough on silly crimes that don't need to be crimes. Here I'm speaking to your libertarian side, PineCreek. Basically put less fathers in prison, allow them to stay with their families, or at least give them reasonable punishments for their crimes, as opposed to exceedingly long sentences.
So
keep families together.
So you and I are the same in terms of we want to see 2-parent homes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I definitely want that. I'm a doctor. I can see the evidence.
Okay.
People.
So if, let's say we control for crime and we still see a lot of single-parent homes in a particular demographic, what now?
Yeah.
Do you still propose they have lots of kids?
So if we're looking at the big problem of we want more people in society, go to the people who have a lot of kids and help them make sure they raise their kids right. Because it's hopeless. It's hopeless to get people who have decided they don't want to have kids to have kids.
I don't think it's hopeless.
Oh, it's extremely difficult and involves things that even welfare states like Sweden have tried. It doesn't work. Hungary is trying it right now. It doesn't work. They're far-right government, at least according to the U.S. government. They're a far-right government. They're really interested in...
You could go all crazy and make it by law that if you make over $100,000 a year, you have to have at least one child. If you make over $200,000 a year, you have to have at least two children. If you don't, you go to jail. Now, there's a dystopian world, right?
Well, I mean, that's Sharia law, basically. There are sultans in the past.
Does Sharia law have something like that?
Well, Sharia law, I'm ex-Muslim. I know a little bit about this, but it's not in the Sharia itself. But there are sultans in the past in Muslim places who taxed and fined fathers whose daughters turn 30 without getting married.
Really?
Or who don't have kids of their own excessively compared to people who aren't. So basically taxing single people and people without kids to help people with kids. To incentivize them to get more kids. But that was the crazy solution I told you earlier.
Did it work?
I don't think they had the statistics to back it up, but it's more of a social convention. I'm not sure, because this was in the 1800s, and I don't think they had meticulous record keeping, so I couldn't investigate it. I don't think people could investigate whether it did or didn't work. And at the same time, what we see right now is the people who have the most kids in America, who have a good head on their shoulders, are people like the Amish and the Mennonites, and the people who are ultra-religious Jews. So just make people more religious. And I say this,
But how do you do that when they don't believe it? I mean...
Well, this is another thing from Jonathan Haidt, who was talking about all these secular versus religious communes that popped up in the Old West, like in the Wild West in America, as well as in Israel, the kibbutzes. And it turns out being religious is very helpful to making sure that your commune, whatever community you have, survives past 50 years. I don't know. Maybe that's one of the problems in believing in evolution, I guess, is once you believe in evolution, you become unfit reproductively. I don't know.
It seems like we can't jail people for not having kids if they're, let's say, wealthy, and we can't force people to accept Orthodox Judaism. So we're left with just letting poor, stupid people reproduce like bunnies and just give them lots of money.
Give them money, give them support, give them education. I was talking
hang
about
on.
college.
Turd.
Yeah.
If you give them education and they become smart and educated and know financial principles, they'll stop having kids.
No, it's a different kind of education. I'm not talking about college education. I'm talking
just keep them dumb enough so they keep reproducing.
You're not making this very easy, are you? Here's what I mean.
Well, it's a problem.
Things like vocational school, okay? Like electricians and plumbers and people like that who are in very high demand right now. Those are not the kinds of people who go to college and learn about how the world has an overpopulation problem and they don't need to reproduce and they're super picky about who they marry and whatnot. Those are just, it's an electrician. They're just going to take the first person they have. Anyway.
And I'll let you go. Thanks for your thoughts. I got Andrew Tate waiting to call in here.
Oh, wow. he's going to be good.
First Turt Ferguson, now Andrew Tate.
He's going to tell you about Sharia law being the best way forward.
Yeah, I'm sure he will.
All right, bye.
See ya. And then I'll tell him I'm going to convert to Orthodox Judaism instead. It's an honor and pleasure to have Andrew Tate on. All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you.
So do you have a solution for me on how to get the reproductive rate up?
Yeah,
Reproduction
actually,
rate?
I wanted to talk about that. I
Okay.
wanted to get your opinion on how social media is like pushing unrealistic standards and making unrealistic expectations normal now. So like 5 out of 10 guys want 10 out of 10 girls, and 5 out of 10 girls want 10 out of 10 guys.
Yeah.
Like skewing the sexual marketplace, putting it into chaos.
I agree with you. Like, I think it's very difficult for a teenage girl to watch TikTok and see objectively that they're ugly compared to those women.
Yeah, the top 0.01% get all the views, and the
Yeah.
rest of us are like, oh, that must be okay.
Now, I taught my daughter that these women on TikTok and even in the movies, these are freaks of nature. They won the genetic lottery, and this is not typical or normal. I taught her that most people look hideous naked, and so her expectations, at least comparing herself to other people, I think I've calibrated correctly, so she is not constantly thinking, I need to be this. Just accept your place in life. Here's a really good looking people, here's really ugly people, and you're in the middle. And that's good and okay. It's okay if nobody stares at you because you're average. There's a lot of joy in being average.
Yeah, I used to be in the online world all the time, and then when I finally took my headphones off and actually realized, holy shit, normal people are way, like, they're so unattractive. I never want to ask them out. I never want to talk to them. I have no urge to talk to them. Then I realized my brain's all effed up because I've been looking at.
Well,
top
jail will
1%.
do that to you. Like you learned this when you were spending time in prison?
No, I had all the girls on my webcam business calling me up. I wasn't lonely.
Okay.
I'm talking from the average guy's viewpoint.
But what do we do to get people to have kids? But we don't want stupid people reproducing, do we?
I think the problem is not stupid people reproducing. I think the problem is controlling stupid people. Keeping them in check, in line, not allowing them to abuse the public welfare system or the public benefit system.
Okay.
Because poor people existed all the time. It's only recently that they've been able to weaponize the system against productive families. You know how welfare tends to bias single-parent families and overtaxation.
Yeah, like are you against parents and families being dependent on the government? We don't want that, do we?
Yeah, in some sense, limiting the ability for a single parent to access government funds, because government funds come from a productive man or a productive woman's salary, right?
Right.
I saw a statistic where something like the bottom 40% of the population don't actually pay taxes because they get more in benefits. So it's like the top 50% are paying all the taxes, net taxes. I'm talking net taxes.
I got that data right here. The top.
Because you know how people get benefits, right? So you pay some in taxes and you get some in benefits. But what if the benefits outweigh the taxes you're paying? You're not actually paying taxes, are you?
Right. No, the bottom 50% of wage earners pay 2.3% of all the tax revenue. Yeah. And the top 5% pays 2/3 of all the tax revenue. So basically, we have 5% of the people who really support this country.
And like raise all the other unproductive people's kids indirectly.
Yeah,
through their
right.
funds.
And is providing.
That's obscene.
Well, the thing is, today that's not true. It's the government printing press that's doing it.
Right, that's another problem.
Yeah.
People aren't willing to accept a depression, like you said. They just want to keep the inflation machine going.
What do you think if we abolish the Federal Reserve, let banks, big banks fail, let big corporations fail, just let it happen. Rip the Band-Aid off quickly.
Yeah, because that's what a war is, and usually after a war, there's a period of prosperity in every country, right? Because the reality sets in. People set their expectations low, start working hard, because what other options do they have?
Yeah. The thing is, I consider myself a good parent, and I just look at bad parenting. My wife's a teacher. She sees bad parenting every day. And it just, like, there's some people who should not be reproducing, and the people who shouldn't be reproducing are reproducing the most, and the people who should be reproducing are not.
Also, it's also true about the porn conversation. That's a really big deal for men. It's so easy to get satisfied now. Why bother with all the bullshit girls put on you?
Exactly, and especially in the United States, like I feel for what do you call it? It's not the red pill, is it? It's or the
black pill,
Matgau or whatever.
Oh, MGTOW, yeah, men going their own way.
Yeah, men going their own way. Like if a man puts all the effort in to try to find a woman, and then finally does, she marries him, he becomes prosperous. They have a couple kids, and then she leaves him.
Right.
Because he doesn't treat her like the princess that she deserves to be treated. But
she gets bored.
Or she gets bored, or maybe there's a better looking guy, and then she takes half his wealth and the kids.
Right.
Like, why would any man risk that?
Then there's falsely getting accused of harassment or whatever. But that's very rare. I think the divorce risk is the big one.
Yeah. And so maybe the solution is for men not to marry American women and go overseas, where a woman's last decision is to say "I do." Yeah, or change the divorce laws. Yeah,
change the family court laws. Sounds reasonable.
Or make it by law, every marriage has to have a prenup.
Right.
And that way, everything's settled even beforehand. And if a woman leaves because she doesn't feel loved enough, that's not a good enough reason. She gets nothing. She can leave and get half if he's unfaithful or maybe commits certain crimes, like abuse, physical abuse. See, that's another thing. Like the whole thing about psychological abuse, like a woman, that's so subjective. Like he said this to me and I feel traumatized, like this is abuse. I think that happens a lot in marriages, and then they use that as an excuse to get divorced, when really all the guy said is, you look fat in those jeans.
Do you think people dating is just practicing to get divorced? Because in dating, you're like, I don't like someone, I just leave, start a new relationship. Do you think that's like practicing for divorce, future?
Well, no, I don't want to be that cynical. But I guess practically it has become that.
Because you could just leave a relationship next someone.
Yeah. Do you think there should be no fault? Or sorry, that divorce should be illegal?
I like how the Muslims do it. The wife can't actually ask for divorce. She can ask, but only the man has the authority to give divorce. So that's like keeps the marriage stable, because I heard like most divorces, it's like 80% of the divorces are started by women. So it feels like a girl problem, not a guy problem. Most guys are simple guys in a marriage, right?
Yeah.
It's usually the resource problem, or the girl gets bored, or domestic abuse. That's also a thing.
Yeah, so if only men could do the divorce, except for exceptions of abuse, physical abuse, do you think women would get married then?
That's a good question. You should ask someone. You should get more girls on the podcast. I feel like it's only men talking here.
Well, yeah, but men run the world, right? So I guess we could get a woman's opinion.
Yeah, but then she wouldn't shut up.
Actually, I got a lot of women watching my channel.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You have any like, it's like 4% of the audience?
No, I think it's higher than the average. But it's just because I'm so sexy, like you.
Yeah, it's those hot Christian MILFs.
Yeah. Okay. Well, with that, I'll let you go. You gave some good advice.
Thank
you. See ya. Are there any women who want to come in and talk about divorce and marriage and reproduction? And I mean, it would be good to have a diversity of thought. I'm all for inclusion and diversity. Nathan, do you want to come in? You're basically a woman. He's smiling right now, I guarantee it.
40s, it's too late.
Oh, did he come in already? No, this is someone else. Andre Lambert.
Hello. Does this sound work?
Yeah, you sound all right. Können Sie
thanks.
Deutsch sprechen?
Ja, ich kann Deutsch sprechen.
Oh, but that's not your native language.
Not so much. Not so much. I'm actually Finnish.
You're
Have a
Finnish?
French name. French name, but Finnish.
Okay. Now, Finland, from my understanding, has got everything figured out in the world.
Of course not. that's
Not true?
like we are supposed to be like a socialist paradise where everything goes super well and
I respect Finland.
No
you know,
crime.
you know why I respect Finland is because they have very tough immigration laws. Right?
Well, we are getting some tougher, but we have had way too loose of a laws. We just got a last year new government, which is actually doing something about it, but it's a real problem.
Oh, okay. So that's a new thing. Yeah, because Sweden really screwed up. Your neighbor.
Yeah, there's a path of Sweden. Is the slogan we use.
Okay. So did you come in with a solution to the reproduction problem? Like, how do we get more people?
Well, I want to discuss an idea that is related to this.
Okay.
I'm currently doing an econ program in university.
Okay.
And I'm very interested in this public policy area of birth rate.
Okay. Well, I got the right guy then. This is going to be good.
Yeah. I'm not so too far into this dwelling into this area, but my question is, we have a society that values rights, freedoms, all that, but less responsibilities, and I think this is some key like societal effect of having less kids, since we have a pension system here that mostly is public and relies on having a large new generation of people to pay for the
Ponzi scheme has to continue.
Ones. Yeah, but it doesn't incentivize in any way to have kids, the pension system itself, and there's a complete disconnect, and I'm not sure how do you create this sort of culture of responsibility. That's what I wanted to discuss. I'm personally a Christian, but I'm not sure, like, even a secular worldview, how can we
how can we legislate responsibility?
Yeah. Yes, that's my problem.
Well, I think the answer, unless you accept Jesus Christ into your heart, you can't do it. No, I think just with advertising, it has to be done with pushes and pulls. You got to incentivize people and dissuade people. I think praising and shaming works. I think society can say, hey, look, if you are doing well in life, be a productive member of society and have kids and be a good parent. And if you're a single young woman, maybe think twice before having coitus with this one-night stand type deal, because you could get pregnant. And then if you're religious, you're going to say no to abortion, and then you're going to have this unwanted child in your life, and you're going to be now dependent on the government. It's not a good idea. So I think you just have to explain to people their future, based on certain decisions they make, and ask them, do you really want that future?
I do agree that this is a sort of public awareness about these things is completely going downhill, especially with social media. And one thing since we do have like compulsory military training for young adults, like do you think that this sort of like birth rate education responsibility should be like could be added to this program of conscription and
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
this like education and kind of re-education of the youth from the social media age.
I think
Could be,
United States should adopt that. I think United States should go. I don't think they ever had it, but that reminds me. My son just turned 18 and he has to enlist in. Oh, I got to remind him. But I think in the United States it would be helpful if both men and women had to serve at least 1 year in the military, and learn responsibility. Learn that the world doesn't revolve them. Learn that it's okay to be shouted at times and cry. Learn that what it's like to be so out of breath that you almost want to faint. I mean, there's so many kids nowadays who are not even in sports. They have no idea about competition and about pushing yourself to the limits. And that, yeah, I think that would be good. So in Finland, you actually have to be in the military for a year or two?
Yes, it's a half a year to a year, depending on your
half a year
choice or what you get forced into.
So you did that already?
No, I still haven't done it. I went straight to uni from
University.
high school, but
so you can do it at any time, or is there a limit?
it's usually people do it before uni if they don't know that they get accepted. They just go and. But it's 20 to 30 years old.
Okay, so you got lots of time.
Yeah.
Okay. And is it difficult? What sort of things do you have to do? Like, do you have to wear a 50-pound backpack and go up the Norway mountains
carry stuff around,
or Finland mountains?
Carry stuff around. There's not really mountains. In the forest, sleep in a tent with your bodies and just survive.
Okay. I'm curious, do they have trans people in the military in Finland?
Yeah, probably. There's a new we got a new law that removed the necessary doctors visits for declaring yourself the opposite gender, and the popular sort of center-right liberal type old conservative that turned kind of woke party. They just voted in favor of the bill. Most of them voted, I think, for it, and it passed with their support. And they tried to kind of weasel this messaging about, well, military, how could this affect the military if people just try to evade conscription by declaring themselves female or something? And yeah, but I think it was just, it isn't a real problem, and not many people will do it. But I'm not sure how the law works. Maybe if you're a female, then you can go there, and female people can serve as well.
And by female people, you mean women.
Yeah, but maybe these trans identifiers are the new female population in the military. But.
Okay, so talking about citizens being required to do military service, are you saying this is part of the solution to increase the reproduction rate?
I would say that since many people see this as a responsibility, and there are there's in high school years or vocational schools, we have very good vocational school. In the last year of that, everybody is like called up to this info kind of event about the military, and people then sign up to a particular barracks location to go to, and or like maybe say that I can't do this yet and I'll do it later on. And like combining this these events that all people go to could be used to educate about needing people to have both people in the military for new generations and for like pension systems. And overall, I think a good research maybe when I move on to my master's degree, I could my fantasy would be like put a research setting on attitudes on birth rate and how many kids you want into this these events.
Would you advocate
required of all?
Would you advocate more religion to increase birth rate?
Yes, of course. I would advocate for that, but
because even here in the U.S., like evangelical Christians in general are tending to have less kids. So that's no guarantee you're going to increase the reproduction rate just by becoming a Christian. But the previous caller mentioned you have to become an Orthodox Jew or a Muslim or a Mennonite in order to have more kids.
Yes, we have a sect of Lutherans that despise all contraception, and even there's been some news that even their population rate is declining. So it's not a guarantee, but maybe it will work somewhat. But that's my 2 cents.
Did you hear what I said earlier about it seems like the people who shouldn't reproduce are reproducing? Like it seems like the very poor people or the not so bright people, they're having kids like crazy. Would you be in support of stopping that, or would you just say, like another caller I had, no, let it happen, and then you just gotta kind of help them?
I think seeing this through like a responsibility lens is a good way to handle it. That maybe if you're not a man, then having kids will hopefully make you a man and take on some responsibility. And maybe it will not work out always good for the kids, but I think that's a valid, like a conservative way of dealing with that.
I like that. Maybe having kids will help make you a man. I agree with that. It definitely does. But I think getting married and moving far away from your family really helped me to become a man, because I just can't get my dad to come help me with something. It's like I got to figure this out.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
I think that's it. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on. Andre, how do you say your name in your native language? Is it
Henry?
Oh, it is Henry. Okay, Henry. Yes. Yeah, say something to our Finnish viewers who might be listening in Finnish.
Moikka kaikki, torilla tavataan.
And what does that mean?
What's up, all? Let's see at the town square.
Okay.
Finland mentioned. We'll go party outside.
Okay. Well, I'll next time I go to Finland, I'll look you up and we'll do coffee or something. Thanks for coming on. Nathan, you've been so active in the chat. You don't want to come on in? I want to see if this Scott Galloway has anything else interesting to say. Galloway went broke twice. Divorce. Oh, we were just talking about divorce. Let's see what Galloway has to say.
Assets overnight, 50% of your wealth, and then another 10% because your costs go up, if not more because you're a forced seller. But also what we don't talk about is professional divorce. You know, the thing that kills small companies that are doing well, or even medium-sized companies, is the partners go at each other. They get into a fight and it tears apart the firm. So professional divorce. So if you're making a good living and you want to be sure that you ideally have a greater chance of building real wealth, you want to bring forgiveness and generosity to your personal and your professional relationships. And I generally find that people who have economic security are good people who've been able to maintain strong relationships. You know, the key is not waiting for an apology, but getting to the point where you can forgive the debt. Like if you don't bring forgiveness to relationships, if you don't bring generosity, I don't think you're ever going to be that financially successful, because the key to wealth and greatness is in the agency of others. And that is, you want to collect allies along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and write things down on paper. He made a great point that business divorce amongst shareholders, partners, can be way worse than divorce in marriage.
You talk a lot about relationships in the book, and I would love to hear like the importance of maybe family in that relationship, because I feel like I believe like the birth of your son was also a catalyst for you, wasn't it? Take us back to that time in your life too. And I've interviewed other folks who have had a similar thing when they had a kid come into their lives.
Yeah, well, it just got me very focused. My goals as a young man were to be rich and awesome, and not as much to be those things, but to have the appearance of those things. So I was spending pretty much not every dollar I made. I was never in debt or anything like that, but I was just focused on perception. So it was important to me to be seen at the right clubs, go to St. Bart's over the holidays, have a very expensive car.
Big mistake.
Have the fat loft in Soho. And when the kid came along and I didn't have as much money as I thought, it was really upsetting and humiliating. If I'd just been a little bit smarter, a little bit more mature, had invested early, I would have just been in a less insecure position. So the kid got me, or kids now, very focused. It's no longer about you and there's no faking it. I'm a talented guy. If I was single, I can crash on people's couch. I know I can make a living. When it's your kid, you can't do that. You got to have good schools. You got to have a certain level of economic.
Yeah, this is exactly what the Finnish gentleman was saying, that having children helps a man become a real man. This is why I'm a little, why I discriminate against some people when I'm talking to them. I'll often ask, are you married? Do you have kids? The answer is no to both, and they're like in their 30s. Like, I do think less of you, a little bit. It's like you haven't really, you don't know what real responsibility is like. Having kids is a huge responsibility. Okay, let's see if this is from the river to the sea. Oh no. Oh no.
From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
Ah, yes. Did you see the short I made today?
No, I've not seen it. Let me.
I don't look at it now, but I just basically made a short that where this guy Galloway was saying,
campus one.
Yeah, if a cartel came in from Mexico into Texas and killed 36,000 people and took 1,000 people as hostages in underground tunnels, the United States would probably make a big chunk of Mexico a parking lot by now.
Yeah, I don't know that it would be exactly the same though. I think there's a big disparity in the sense of like, to make it analogous, what you'd have to do is like the United States would have to put the whole of Mexico on lockdown and like destroy absolutely everyone's homes, the entire government, all the infrastructure, prevent aid from getting to people. And yeah, it's to make it exactly.
It's easier just to kill them.
Exactly.
The war between if we can put a morality on a shelf for a second and just talk about pragmatics. What Israel ought to do is have a policy for every one Israeli killed by Hamas, 1,000 civilians will be targeted.
I mean, I think
that would end the war.
I think that's sort of the rhetoric coming out of some of the, military personnel's mouths.
Highly immoral. Hey,
Netanyahu government.
That would be highly immoral, right? Highly unethical, but it would work. So Hamas killed 1,300 people, so that'd be 1.3 million, which would be what, a third of their population?
That's pretty much. I think that's almost the population.
No, I thought they had 5 million. Okay, we could negotiate the number.
I thought it was slightly less, but yes.
But basically, you say, or you could say, for every 1,000, we'll kill 10% of your population, and we'll target the family of Hamas first, the mothers, the fathers, their children. But if you target civilians, the war would be over very quickly.
Anyway, for a man so concerned about population dynamics, you're sure in a reductive mood.
Yeah, that will help increase the population. Okay.
What you should do. So here's what you can do. You can solve two problems in one. If you take all of the Palestinians, move them from Israel to America, and just
Palestinians?
Yeah.
No, I want the Jews. They're funnier.
No, you don't.
Have you heard of Larry David?
Yeah, but they want to live in Israel, Doug. They don't want. But the Palestinians, they'll come over there
Hey,
with Islam, so they're very religious. They'll breed like mad.
I'll show them the sunsets in Arizona, and those Jews will come. I mean, no, like the Jews are very funny, resourceful people. I mean,
yeah, but you want to keep them out of America. They just, they do banking and stuff. They control people. They manipulate your politics.
like Hollywood's going downhill. We need some fresh Jews to get back on track. For the record, I love the Jews. You do too, right? You love Jews?
As long as they stay in Israel.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, of course.
John, I'll be with you in a second, or 5 minutes. So what's the solution to the low reproduction rate? Or are you one of those people who think we should go hand in hand into extinction?
No, I think they're very complicated issues, and the problems aren't exactly the same anywhere. I mean, the effects of population pyramid shapes and people not having kids and certain economic effects like supply demand of housing and things are the same in some places. But if you look at, I don't know, a place like France versus the US, the nature of the problem is very different. So how you'd address it policy wise, I think, is very different between the two places. I'm not sure. Maybe migration should be viewed as a potential solution but you need some way of making sure that you don't have a bunch of horrible people with horrible values coming in as well.
Why do you sound like me right now? Are you okay?
Because I'm getting older, Doug. I am ill. I've got some kind of COVID or something. I'm getting older.
Because I do think immigration is, and I'm glad you brought this up because we haven't talked about this yet. Immigration is one of the solutions for at least the reproduction rate within the United States. So I would bring in wealthy people with lots of kids who are healthy and have no history of crime and have a history of entrepreneurship. Basically, whatever the left views as like the enemy, those are the people I'd bring in. The people who actually will pay a lot of taxes.
I think that's sort of right. The problem is, though, in a sense that they've already had their kids, and you almost want it to be their kids having kids. Do you know, like?
Oh, they will because they were raised right.
Well, I think the problem is, though, if you give them, if they're raised right, and you give, they go into good jobs and stuff, they become the very sort of people that aren't having kids, right? So
yeah,
you kind of have the problem there, where actually what you want almost is your working class type people who are maybe gonna make more risky life choices with respect to having kids and stuff, but you want them to somehow.
What if we made a law that said, if let's say you make $100,000 a year, which is a good wage as long as you're not in California and New York, and then if you have 2 more kids, you pay 0 federal income tax. I mean,
yeah,
just really incentivize.
Yeah, I think you could do things like that for sure. And I think there are differences in American culture as well. So one of the reasons that people aren't having kids is because it's very difficult for them to buy houses and things like that in relationships as well. So I think maybe there are value changes where if you look at Asian culture, where older parents tend to move in with their kids towards the end of their life rather than taking up some massive suburban home that someone else could have. Somehow something, I don't know how you enforce that though. I don't know that I'd want the state to get involved, but value changes could definitely change up house prices a little bit if you get people moving out. The other alternative is to kill old people, but That one's
I'm
a little
okay
bit
with
more
that.
controversial.
I mean, that's why I was pro COVID.
But I think another thing though that is not thought about enough is I agree with you. You can reduce tax burden on people on lower incomes, because really, when you look at where all the money is, it's the billionaires, right? It's the mega rich. It's not even the people who are earning like $500,000 salaries a year. Like, the gap between someone who's on $500,000 salary a year and like a billionaire is huge in terms of where the wealth is, the money that's made per year off of capital gains and things like that. And I think that's those sorts of things.
Yeah, but you heard my argument for that. As like,
look at the taxes.
It's not like they have.
Well, you say they won't work as hard, but
it's not like that. There's billionaires with $1 billion in their checking account. They got investments all around, and which are creating jobs.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that this is where you want to look at cracking down on those sorts of like tax loopholes. You want to look at changing rules around capital gains tax, changing rules around property ownership, for example. So I don't know, I can imagine in US cities where housing is super expensive, maybe like New York or San Francisco or something, you could introduce laws around what sorts of people are able to buy property. So are foreign investors allowed to buy property? No. And then that's going to change the dynamics of the market. I think there's all sorts of things that can be done that will just make the conditions slightly better. But I think overall, though, this is weird because the US economy is actually killing it. Like, US wages compared to the rest of the world are insane compared to the price of
this is why inflation's not coming down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyhow, John wants in. So
Okay.
I wanted a female perspective, so thank you for coming on.
Oh, you're welcome. No worries. And yeah, and look, and if you want birth rates to go up, just import me to the US, as I've been saying in the chat.
You're a coitus machine, yeah.
I can help things out.
Your sperm count's good?
I mean, I've not had it checked, but I think it's all right.
Maybe we should.
I mean, there's that much.
Maybe we should just have baby. Maybe we should just have like a egg factory, and then you come in and just fertilize them all, and then we get the best parents in the world to bring them up.
Well, there was one thing I was going to say that you might be interested in as well, actually, is that I almost did the passport bro thing, because I actually went to Indonesia and met a Muslim girl, and we had a good week, but luckily she took Plan B. But I honestly think that the culture difference would have been very difficult. And if you look at the cost, so if I'd actually if I was going to have a relationship.
So is this the first child you've killed?
This is no, not this year, even not that month.
I just lost my Catholic viewers.
But like, for example, if we were going to have a relationship, right, it would cost tens of thousands to get a visa for her to be able to come over to the UK. Like I'd be spending any kind of deposit that I'm thinking of having to buy a house, right?
Just
I'd
to
be
have
spending that on just trying
have her come walk across the southern border of UK. Don't you have that loophole?
The southern border. Yeah, unfortunately not. We put barbed wire in our southern border.
Oh, you guys are smart. Okay.
Oh no, we're sending. If you come across the southern border, then we send you to Rwanda. You know about that, right? So
I hear it's nice there in the spring.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I'll let you go. Thanks for coming on.
That's when civil war's at an all-time low. Yeah. Anyway, see you in a bit, Doug.
See ya. PineCreek, your argument stands, and taxing rich just takes money from the productive and giving it to the non-productive. Not always, but in general, yeah. So the solutions we've come up with so far, and John, you can call in now. Solutions we've had so far to increasing the reproduction rate for people who want us not to go extinct in the world. Incentivize through tax policies, but you incentivize the wealthy or middle class or higher. Another one is to increase the value of responsibility That was the Finnish guy's opinion. That somehow by having people go into the military, learning responsibility through education, the value of families, that being taught. What other solutions did we come up with? Oh, immigration, import people with family values. Another suggestion is have people become more religious, but that's a real tough thing to do. And again, like, it has to be a certain type of religion. Like, even your basic Christian in the United States, they're not having kids. Christian families. You have to be either traditional, conservative Roman Catholic, or maybe conservative Orthodox, conservative Jew, conservative. Basically, only conservatives like to reproduce. I think that's the bottom line. And this is why they're conservative. Is it the chicken or the egg? When you have kids, you tend to become more conservative. And when you're conservative, you tend to have more kids. So it feeds off each other. Make women think having babies is trendy. Well, I see what you're getting at there. And welcome, Apologia Center. I think there's this attitude amongst women that, some women, I gotta say, that having a career is more valuable than being a mother, which in my opinion is the furthest from the truth. I think, at least according to my wife, the most fulfilling thing a woman can do is have children and raise them herself, not in daycare where strangers raise your children. Let me shame women here for a second. If you're a woman who's had kids and the vast majority of the day is spent away from your child, shame on you. And then fathers, shame on you if you don't spend quality time with your kids. I know you're probably the breadwinner in the family, but if you're spending so much time traveling or whatever and not spending quality time with your kids, shame on you. Stop it. Because before you know it, your kids are going to be out of the house and you're going to say, where did my young children go? See, this is what we need in society. More shaming and more praising. And if you're a father listening and you spend quality time with your kids, if you're a mother who's raised your children instead of just stick them in daycare, to you, I salute you. Thank you for your service to our country. Because it is a service to our country when parents do their job. You are the best. You are great. In fact, even if you're not paying a lot in taxes, you're producing more for our country than people who pay more in taxes, because your kids will probably grow up and be more likely to be productive members of society.